What is up, YouTube? Back in the garage one more time. Been packing up for our trip. We're gonna go to Simcoe. That fizzled out. A million things going on. Not gonna make the Simcoe event, unfortunately. It is what it is. But that's not gonna stop. We couldn't find, at the end of the day, couldn't find a dog sitter. Lots of things going on. Normally I got two dogs, so just trying to split both of them up is a pain in the ass. My mom will take one, her mom will take one, and logistically we couldn't make it work. So instead we decided to do a solo camp out trip. Dottie, me, and the dogs in the van, which I prefer. So I'm looking forward to it. Bummed I'm gonna miss out on seeing a bunch of people, but way better when we can do like a little family outing. Here's the Falcon. Still pulled in, batteries charged up. Been waiting on this box all day. That was supposed to be here yesterday. It's a one-wire alternator. Everything else is pretty much done. I did a new front crank seal on here. I gotta hook up the lower coolant line. I gotta tighten down the upper coolant lines. Hook up a battery, hook up the alternator. And she should be done-ish to run and drive for a little bit. I also got the 411 gear set for the rear, along with these two differentials that I need to pull apart to make work. Camping pile that needs to go on the van or on the hitch. Lots of things happening. Just kind of nickel and diming away, I guess, if you will. But main goal today, I got a couple hours, sun's going down. I'm gonna throw the alternator in and try and figure out what we need to do on this. Move some of these coolant hoses if I have to, but for the most part it should drop right in and line up. I'm not overly concerned on that, and then, like I said, the lower coolant hose is the biggest issue that I have from this starting and running and driving. Haven't changed anything else. We did a front main seal, but set you guys up, we'll drop the alternator in, and then we'll go over the wiring to convert from the regular regulator to a one wire. Normally I don't care that much about how long things take to come via shipping, because it's substantially faster than it was when I grew up using the internet. Not that old. However, every time I ordered something, I expected about a week turnaround. Post Amazon and eBay and all, any of them, it's typically 2-3 days. Well, I ordered these on, or, well, ordered this on Thursday, Friday. It said Monday. Guaranteed delivery by Monday. They lied. Not that big of a deal. Just an alternator, not my only car. However, then I got antsy about the entire thing. So, tuffstuff, one wire, Ford V-belt alternator, shipped directly from my boy Jeff Bezos. So, here is what we are looking at. Hopefully this fixes all of my problems. There we go. Looks like it's got a powder coated or painted housing. Nothing fancy, not the chrome dress up kit at all, but we'll drop this thing in there. One post, one ground. So one wire, not necessarily one, but minus the ground, one wire alternator. Should be way easier to hook up too. We'll turn you guys around. Now we're into the part where I don't really know what exactly is going to line up where. In theory, this is supposed to bolt right up. In actuality, not really sure. There's a pretty big spacer on this one, short spacer on this one. Let me grab the old Junkyard stalker here. Same type of deal, big spacer here. One bolt for the tensioner. I do lose the tensioner adjustment here, it looks like. We'll see. You guys can't even see that. That's foolish of me. So here's the stalker, big spacer, short little ear. Old one, big spacer, short ear, and then our threaded bolt. Hopefully the threads are the same. Hopefully everything else will drop right in. Normally when I'm working on this, the sun's usually going down, but the car's turning around, so now we got the hood here It's going to be a little bit darker than usual. Hopefully any of this will show up, but I'm going to take our big old fancy bolt, drop this through, and our big old forward spacer. I didn't check clearances on any of the wires, so hopefully these all fit. Come on. Stupid Fords and your stupid spacers. Also covered in corrosion now. Alright. Let me sand this bolt down real quick. Super fancy 80 grit emery cloth on the bolt. This is all bolted together before, so I don't understand why I'm having such an issue now. But hopefully that's enough to get her going. Bolt slides right through the alternator like it's supposed to. Issue I run into, oh, I did that backwards. Bolt, then alternator. Drop this thing down. Come on. I lost my warning tag. Come on now. Alright. The alternator's in place. We'll get the bolt through first. Then our spacer. Hopefully I don't have to drill this out anymore. If I do, it's not that big of a deal, but I don't want to. I'll slide this behind the bracket on the bottom. Then I need a tappy device. Go back. Grab the closest hammer you got. Try and line this up semi-close. Lower bracket's kind of binding up a little bit, so we're going to pry that out just a hair. Then see if this will drop in. Alright, 5/8 on the top, it's a 9/16 pinch bolt on the bottom. Grab a 5/8 wrench or a socket. We'll start the top, and then we'll go down below. Really take for granted what tools you actually have until you leave them at the shop and don't have them. So I don't have my electric impact today, which I hadn't had one for the longest time, but now I gotta turn bolts by hand. This is terrible. Not that I rely on that for final torques of any sort, but at least just kind of getting stuff snugged up. This is not that much fun. So the only issue I'm going to run into on this alternator that I can foresee right now, I need to make a little bridge from the ground on the block. So this is my ground on the block right now. I need to make a 4-inch little bridge to the ground terminal on the outside of the case here. And then on the hot side, I don't have anything long enough to use that. So I'm gonna assemble all of this. It's getting dark, bugs are coming out, so I'm not gonna be here that long. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, to finish all this up. Same thing with the radiator hose. We'll do those tomorrow morning, but I'll drop below. I got a 9/16, well, 3/8 bolt, 3/8 by 16 for the lower alternator spacer adjustment. Then I'll put a pry bar in here, wedge it off of this hose clamp and the timing cover, pull that tight, get the belt set. And then in terms of the electronics, I have one wire down here by the head. Hopefully you guys can see that. That's my one wire underneath this coolant hose. So one wire goes where my finger ends there. I don't know what's going to show up on camera when I edit this. But one wire here, from that to the battery, and by the battery I mean from that to the starter solenoid, one ground right in front of the dipstick to this engine ground that I'm using now. And that's all it takes. I can bypass this regulator, I can get rid of half of the wires that run across the loom of the firewall, looking forward to it. I know from what I read and researched, they're going to be a little bit less in terms of charging at idle. As long as it charges while I'm driving, it'll put a charge into the battery. That's all that matters to me. And my old one is debatable whether it's the alternator or the regulator. Regulators are cheap because they're made like crap. And I've had horrible experiences with new modern parts these days, so I would much rather bypass one extra part if I can. Ditch the stock alternator. I literally picked this out of a junkyard and it was a free throw-in. I paid $0 for it. It worked all last year. That's a win for me. There's also a DC electric guy right up the road. He could rebuild that pretty cheap and I could still keep the factory stuff, but this is not a purist mobile and it's absolutely beat to crap. So other advantage of running a one wire, with how often I mess around and flip-flop motors and things, way easier to pull out, way less wires to deal with. Now I have one wire on the alternator anytime I do a motor swap, or when we go around to doing that 351, same type of deal. One wire on the alternator, yank it out, one wire back in. So I'm gonna jump out of the car. I'm not bringing it with me because it's way too dark out now. I'm gonna tighten up the alternator, throw the belt back on. Tomorrow morning we'll be back with the rest of the assembly, so trying to figure out how to lay out the electrical. Hopefully I can grab some thick gauge wire before tomorrow morning. Probably won't happen. Might be tomorrow afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow. All I was going to do is tighten up the bottom pinch bolt on the adjuster. I'm running into issues. We just loaded all of the flashlights into the van, so I don't have much to work with. What do I got? Got nothing. Eh. Do you work? Yeah. Here's the problem. Kind of a major one too. If we look at this, here's the alternator bracket on the upper, the adjuster slotted one on the lower. All good there. Do you see where that post is? Hopefully that redness shows up on camera. I don't know. I'm looking through the viewfinder and I can't see anything. But the red post right there is touching the head. Better with the light, worse with the light. Red post is touching the head. That's not good. That's all of my charging voltage rubbing on the head. So I might have to get a longer belt. This is pretty much maxed out as it sits. I don't know if I need a longer belt to try and cock it over. Not maxed out on the... It's pretty far over. So I don't know if I can get by with a longer belt and try and swing it out a little bit more, or if I'm going to have to dig deeper into trying to clock this a different way. All of my problems were supposed to be answered with this one wire. That's going to cause a major issue. Anyway, let me jump underneath. I'm going to put some tension on this, swing it out, see what it looks like, then make a decision. I'll update you guys tomorrow when the sun's out, and we can see what we're doing. Just did some closer upfront investigation without you guys coming along. The bolt is 100% hitting the head. The stud out of the alternator is hitting the head by about a 1/4 inch. Bolt also threads down another 1/4 inch from that, so I'm gonna leave this as is tonight. I'll drop the hood back down, clean up some of my stuff. Then tomorrow morning I'm gonna come out here and take an angle grinder to a brand new alternator and shave off a 1/4 inch of stud post out of the alternator. Re-thread chase the end of that, put the wire on. I'll use the cap out of this one of those. Let's do one of these caps just to insulate it. Throw it all back together and send it down the road. It's a little bit closer than I want it to be. I was really hoping for a bolt up and go. That just doesn't work out for me. So that's it for now. We'll be back tomorrow. Well, it's the next day, as promised, bright and early. It's about 7 a.m. Everything's covered in dew. But where we left off last night, alternator goes in, but hits the block down here. So when I put that in, the post on the alternator, which I'll bring you guys over right now to look at, is hitting on the motor, this guy. So I'm going to take the angle grinder, we're going to zip off this upper edge of that, because that stud's sticking out too far, that's what's hitting. Then I'll take the rubber boot off of the old alternator, put the cap on over the new wire I'm going to hook up. I'm going to put the wires on here and the ground first, because there's not a whole lot of room once it gets mounted back in the car. So, brand new part, might as well hack it up and get set up and we'll grind away. At some point, I'm really hoping in the near future I'll be able to buy parts that actually just bolt on and fit the way they're supposed to without modifications. But where's the fun in that? So, we'll turn this around a little bit. What's the best way to go about this? That's fine. A little shorter. And hopefully we can work the threads a little bit here. Still comes off clean. Might be in luck. Alright, let me grab a cable. Get this set up on one side at least, and the other alternator. So what we're gonna try and do is move some stuff. And then I want to steal one of these boot covers. So I don't know which one yet. Maybe the red one. We'll see. Let me take this old alternator apart and then we'll flip-flop it over. Alright, so I pulled the bolt for the hot lead, the battery lead from the old one. Now I got a rubber boot here. Don't know how well this is going to fit over the new heavy-duty gauge wire that I have. Probably not at all. So we're going to modify this, just make sure it works. I don't care about the sheathing part, it's just this cap that I'm really going to need. So, back to cutting. Back to the new alternator now. And try and see if I can get this tightened down. Now, this sits on the car and we'll have to go this way-ish. This wire might actually be too thick for what we're doing. But that'll cap that. I'll put a piece of electrical tape around the base of this. Then we'll go see what it looks like in the car. Used a zip tie instead of electrical tape. I think that should work just fine, provided that everything else will bolt up to this. Then I think I'm gonna run one quick little ground lead here as well. So let me string up one more wire. Got a new eyelet. Would be nice to heat shrink all of this too, but one thing at a time. Just doing this now because I know it gets really tight there with the dipstick and everything else in the way. And this is just a ground, so this one can be exposed. Now the fun part. And hopefully this will work. I'm very nervous based on how tight of a fit everything on here was yesterday. No bolts in the way. It's a tight fit, that's for sure. But I think that'll do. I'll grab my ratchet. I'm catching the threads for whatever reason. Just looking at where this is at. Down below now. I think we should be clear. I'm actually going to pull this bolt and put one more washer spacer on the back side. Belt alignment's pretty close, and I used to have one more washer over here anyway. So I'm going to add a couple washers there, and then we'll throw the belt on and see how close she actually is. I only have the upper bolt on right now. A couple threads in. But I want to see if I can get the belt on. I think we should be okay here. Maybe we'll wait on the belt until I get this bolted in. Now we're starting to go in. Let me get the pinch bolt started on the bottom real quick. I'll be right back up top. Alright, so I got the belt back on the pulleys. Now, I'll start snugging some of this stuff up. I'll put a pry bar in there and make sure that we got enough tension on here. Make sure our rubber boot stays on. The farther out I can get this alternator, the better in terms of clearance from the block to the head. I'll jump down below, tighten up that last pinch bolt. I think we should be okay. We'll find out real soon. It's way closer than I would like it to be. I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see this, but there's the rubber boot right in front of my finger there on the alternator. It's right by the corner of the head. I might have to grind a chunk out of the head. For peace of mind, I ended up pulling that upper bolt out. Put 2 washers in here in front of the spacer. Got that tightened down to the head, so now I just got to go down and adjust the tension. That gives me enough clearance, so now I got a gap in between the head and the alternator, which is much better in my opinion. It's still tight, and I don't think it tweaked our belt alignment enough to be concerned. We'll find that out in a little bit, but let me try and pry this out, tighten the bottom. This is really where a helper comes in handy, trying to pry the alternator tight while tightening the bolt underneath, but we'll try and see what we can do solo here. There's not really anything to grab in terms of adjustments here, so the goal today is just to get this fired up again, and then I can drive it to the shop. If I need to add more tension on this, I'll have a helper up there to hold the pry bar. But that's snugged up down there now. And see if I can get you guys close enough to see that gap on the cable. So right here is the cable. We got a rubber boot on there too. Everything's really hard to see, but rubber boot on there covering the terminal. And we got a air gap there. So I think that should be all right. Still kind of close for comfort. That boot's seen better days, unfortunately. But we'll try it. And if I melt the electrical system, so be it. I made some quick little connections. Everything's, again, per usual with me, super sloppy, unorganized, and ugly, but we have our black 1-wire up to the battery post. Actually, not from the battery. Ran the hot lead, which is black, unfortunately, but that goes up to the starter solenoid on the hot side. So this is live battery power direct from the hot side of the battery. This black and yellow wire is the factory fusible linked wire that would go down to the alternator, but that needs a constant hot source. So I tapped that into the leg from the solenoid post to the hot side of the battery. So this is what powers up the entire inside of the vehicle too. Then I have the one little ground here, which should go to the engine block. I might move this over to here later today, but I just looped a longer wire. I didn't know where I needed it. Right to the ground leg of the battery. It looks a little confusing because we have 2 battery wires. This is the hot one that comes up and gets looped up into the solenoid. This is the one that goes to the head. So engine ground. Now, the moment of truth. We get to see if this is all gonna light on fire. No sparks, no nothing. So that should be okay for now. We snug down this post. Oh, we gotta put the coolant hoses back on and hook those up too. So I'll tighten this down, then jump underneath, hook up the lower coolant hose, grab the hose, fill it up with water, then we'll try starting it. If it's gonna light on fire, I'd rather have it do that in the driveway. Everything in theory should be working. I got the voltmeter hooked up in the car now too, so I should have 13 some volts. It's been on a charger, so it's probably 12 and a half something. What's that looking at? Yeah, 12 and a half, 13. So that's good. It means we have voltage and we have power. So So let me grab the hose and hook up the radiator hoses, and I'll grab the hose. We'll be back once I get the radiator filled up. Everything else is hooked up. We should be about good to go. So, bring over the old garden hose, fill this thing up. Radiator is filled-ish. We're gonna run it, and then obviously we gotta top her off. Alternator's hooked up, everything's plugged in and tightened down. Moment of truth, I think. Just getting fuel. Let's see what happens here. Got ignition power.
Definitely loose on the belt, but we'll fix that later.
And we're charging.
Up to about 14 volts, so we are in good shape. Definitely need to tighten up the belt. Let this idle, top off the radiator, then we'll run it up to the shop.
Back from the shop, running around like crazy today. Got the hitch mounted back on the van. Pop-up tent is ready to go underneath the bed. We're also bringing both dogs, so trying to figure out how to logistically lay all of this out. But more importantly, on the Falcon, she's running good now. I went through this morning over to the shop, got it going with the new alternator. Didn't short anything out. Sorry, popping the hood. Got the new alternator in. Got to the shop, retensioned it a little bit more. We got plenty of clearance now. That rubber boot's just kind of resting on there, but plenty of clearance on the alternator. Fired it up for the first time. We were at like 14.3, exactly where I want it to be. So that fixed all of the electronic issues. And then if you look close, if anybody spotted it, brand new master cylinder. Ordered one from Rock Auto a little while ago. I did. Brand new rear brakes when I put this 9-inch in. So everything on the back, wheel cylinders, drums, shoes, everything on the back of this was done last time I had it up in the air. Hence one of the reasons the door is smashed. Back brake stopped working. I was underneath the dash looking at something else. I saw a couple drips. Master cylinder was leaking from the inside. So not ideal by any means, but cheap part, so we just replaced it. It is a dual pot, so I got a separate front rear. Lines were already there, so this was honestly as easy as it could possibly be to flip-flop, and then rebled all the brakes. Pumped, I don't know, 6 or 7 pumps of milk out of the front right. Front left wasn't nearly as bad, and then the rears, I popped the bleeders once I got the master in. Did a quick gravity bleed. About 2 minutes later, it was dripping fluid, so rebleeding went extremely fast, extremely easy. Topped off the radiator, and then I hooked up a PCV valve setup as well. Not the biggest fan of it, but it works for right now. And now I don't have as much of a drip on this front header. These little breather, this looks like crap, that's leaking. So that's the exhaust drip right there. And then I tested out the front main seal. New front main seal we pounded in. Seals perfectly. So I got no leaks on the front of this. The only ones I got are coming, like I said, from this mangled up contraption that I made work. So it's leaking out of this valve cover, and it's leaking a tiny bit from this back breather cover. I have the aluminum valve covers at the shop. I just hope there's enough clearance, because I also found out, upon further investigation today, that that breather is actually hitting the lifter. Barely. It's just grazing it. So when we get back from this little trip, I'm going to swap out these valve covers. I'm going to put those cast aluminum ones on there. Hopefully that should fix all of the other leak issues that I have. And then there's one breather hose that goes up to a elevated vent tube. They do look taller than these, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. But she's running really well. I drove this around all day today, beat the living crap out of it. She takes it, shifts good, idle's okay. I mean, it's way lower. I've never run a cammed motor, so this is actually my first cammed motor. Swapped cams, but to put anything performance oriented. It idle in park when it's warmed up, it's about 15 inches of vacuum is what it's pulling. Under load in drive with your foot on the brake, it's fluctuating right between 9 and 12. 9, 10, 11, 12, typically right around 10 inches of vacuum is what this motor's making at idle with the cam. Prior to doing the cam and swapping everything over, it was about 17, dropped down to about 15 in gear. So definitely lost some vacuum pull on the motor, but holy crap, did it wake up top. Then the only other thing I did today, since I was in Falcon mode, I dropped the rear shackles 1 notch. So instead of going to the longest one, we went up 1. I can't really tell aesthetically. I thought it was going to be a little more drastic. I'd like to go 1 more higher, but I do have some tire clearance issues that'll come up real quick. It's another thing to figure out, and we're switching out that rear end center section. So I got the 411s coming. It's just a matter of whether I want to put them on a spool or if I want to put them on a track lock. Haven't decided yet. That's coming real soon. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll get the next rear end built, and then it's just a matter of figuring out when I'm going to have time to actually sit down and go through it. But Falcon's back home. That's going to get flopped out for the truck soon. Van's back, taking that on a 6-7 hour round tripper this weekend. So this is the end of the videos. You probably won't see this till after we get back, but when there's a little hiatus on videos, it's because I am trying to enjoy myself and not think about working on anything. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. We will catch you guys on the next one.